Okay. So I said some of the advantages is that it's also flexible. You get technical knowledge, and you can even change your supplier or whoever is it that is giving you that outsourced service at any time. So that allows for flexibility. What are the disadvantages? Try to think of the issue of quality. That's you will not have control over quality. If you remember, I explained that since some of these experts are coming from outside, they may not even understand that business as much as you. Cost again could be an issue on the long run, an issue of conflict of interest. So, what else do we need to remember when we are talking of outsourcing? Issue of materiality. We have to consider materiality in that area of service being outsourced. We have to consider whether the entity has control over it. What's the significance of that function that is being outsourced? If it's significant, then even you as the auditor, you need to have an understanding of the controls of that service organization. In terms of also outsourcing, we looked at contracts to make sure that contracts are signed. You also need to note that you should have access to books and records. Are there performance standards for those service organizations? Can you rely on the controls in those organizations? What are the risks that are associated with outsourcing of some of these services to a service organization? Issue of reputation, supervision. Can there be errors? What else? What's the impact on your audit? Do you need to plan to visit that organization? Do you need a letter from them? And that letter are the reports I'm talking about. What else can it impact? The scope of your audit. Will you be denied access? Can they not giving you those reports or some of the documents you need? Can it lead to a modified report? Can it lead to scope limitation and things like that? Type of assignments that you can outsource. We have various cleaning and that and that and that. So let's leave that and go to our class for today. It's a very straightforward note. I know you will actually be able to read that and understand. And should you have any challenges with that, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Yes. Type 1, Type 2 reports. So this is 312. So I want to give each of you a minute each to explain what we mean by these reports. What is your understanding of these reports? I know we struggled with it a bit yesterday, which is not unexpected. But now that at the end of that class, we said, yeah, to some extent, we understand what it means. So these reports, these service reports, can anybody just give us a brief description of what we talked about and what it actually means? Whoever has the confidence. Yes.
Type 1 report.
Yes.
Is prepared by the management to determine or to show that there is an existence of internal control,
Okay.
and that it's a design, and also is they have objective for the internal control, as in the objective of the internal control is working well. Why there is also a report from the auditor of the service organization to give assurance of the suitability of that report.
Okay.
Then type 2 is just is prepared by the management also of the service organization to, how will I put it? By the service organization to to show that the controls are working effectively.
Okay.
And it's a detailed report
Okay.
by the service organization to show that it is working effectively.
Okay.
And the type 2, the other part of the report from the auditor of the service organization is to
Yes.
give assurance that the report prepared by the management is actually what it is and it's actually working effectively.
Okay, you have tried. Any addition or subtraction?
Type 1 is for a specified date, while type 2 is for a specific period.
Okay, over a period. Okay. So that's a good attempt. Okay, so please, Lillian and everyone in the house. So type 2 reports is not only prepared by management, it's a report that comprises of two components. The first component is that one that management tries to prepare and ascertain the existence of controls, that's the design and the objective, and that is suitable for their business, internal control operations at a specified date, which Crystal has just added, while the other component of that report is the one prepared by the auditor, giving reasonable assurance on the suitability, the description and suitability of those controls to achieve those objectives. So you did well. So, but please always say type 1 report comprises of two components. So one prepared by management, one prepared by auditor. The one prepared by management is to describe the systems, the control objectives, and internal control operating at a particular date. While the second one, the auditor gives assurance on that document that has been prepared. The second one also comprises of two components: the more detailed report that also has the description and design, but most importantly, the operating effectiveness of controls over a specific period. So when you are using period over a period at a particular date, so usually 6 months, and so I think you guys have the basic understanding. And will your examiner ask you to go and prepare a type 2 report? Maybe not. It may just tell you to describe the importance of a service organization report. Then you should be able to break it down. And maybe 7 marks. Those are the ones you see for 7 marks, 8 marks. And I can bet you that a lot of candidates will leave it unanswered. That's what usually happens. You know how we do now in professional exam. By the time you have answered all the questions you want to answer, when you see some of these 7 marks, you just allow it first and face more serious issues. So we'll move forward from where we stopped yesterday. Now, responding to assessed risk of material misstatement. What we are saying now is that just like we have also discussed in our other classes on responding to assessed risk of material misstatement, it is also the same thing. What the auditor needs to do is to assess whether he has sufficient evidence that he could obtain from records held at that user entity, at that service. If he cannot do that, then he needs to perform further procedures. And these further procedures are not limited to maybe further procedures at the client. It might also include procedures at the service. You can carry out more procedures at the service organization. Do you understand? Or if this service organization is far away, just like that question Lillian asked me long ago, you can use another auditor to go to that service organization to perform those procedures on his behalf. But once you start using another auditor to perform a procedure for you, then you need to consider other things again. You have to communicate with him what you want him to do, what is his qualification, what those other considerations that come with you asking someone to perform a procedure on your behalf. So, but most importantly, make inquiries from management if they are aware of anything or any issue of non-compliance with laws and regulations in the service organization. So, like you start with all your procedures, a discussion will always be a right thing to do. Inquiry will always be a right thing to do. So you inquire from clients management if they are aware of any fraud, non-compliance, especially with law and regulation, or unadjusted misstatement at the service organization that could affect the financial statement. If you are able to do that, you gather some more information that will now lead to you either going there or getting someone to go there, or even to know the type of report you are going to be requesting for. Like we said, you usually not see a situation where somebody is asking for type 1 and type 2 report. If he's not too comfortable with what he's seeing, you rather go for a type 2 report. But if you have the knowledge of the entity over a period of time and you feel that the risk of detection risk is low, you may go for a type 1 report, which will just tell him that certain controls are existent at that time. So the entities auditor can, the auditor should not refer to this report in his work unless the law. I'm sure we have discussed this before, especially when you use an expert. We said it that in most jurisdictions, the auditor is not allowed to refer to the work of the expert. In this case too, in your audit report, you may not refer to the work of this service auditor unless local laws permit. Just like even the issue of component auditors, issue of expert. So please, you have to take very good note of this one. These are those tricky areas that, you know, the examiner can just come up and you may be confused. So that is it about that. But what are actually the benefits to you as an auditor when your client is using service organization? You remember that the reason why you are even providing that assurance in the first place is because of your independence from the client. Because the shareholders have appointed the management to carry out business for them. The management have submitted a financial statement that is a summary of all the transactions that happened within the year. It's like the report of stewardship during the year, and they've called you as an independent assurance provider to provide or express an opinion on this document. So independence is key. But now in this case, you realize that there are actually certain benefits to the auditor. One is the reliability of audit evidence. You know that when we're comparing audit evidence, we're talking of how reliable an evidence can be. We said that evidence from outside the organization is more reliable than evidence from within the organization. So in this case now, you will see that the evidences you are going to gather from the service organization is independent and is external to the client. So in most cases, we are believing that the management will not be able to manipulate these evidences because it's coming from outside the organization. And so those evidence generated are regarded to be more reliable. If they were generated internally, then you may still find other ways of corroborating those evidences. But since it's coming from outside and you have already tried to find ways of assessing the controls at that service organization, they are likely going to be more reliable. Fewer errors. Why are we talking of fewer errors? Because we believe that the service organization is an expert in providing that service. We believe that that is what they do, that is their core business, and they are likely going to make fewer errors in providing those services. They will have more competent individuals assigned to those roles to perform those functions that has been outsourced to them, and reduced level of work. So if you are placing reliance on that work already performed by the auditor of that service organization, then what else do you want to do? You may not need to go there again to start performing substantive procedures in order to substantiate what you have in the financial statement. So it can reduce your work. So these are just the possible benefits, and these have been put in your note just to expand your thinking. You can't tell the mode in which these questions will come. But we said for everything that has a good, there's always a bad. Disadvantage to the auditors, it may restrict access. It may restrict access. But remember that the auditor has right to all books and records. So a question for all of us: what documents can give the auditor confidence that he has been given all books and records, or that all books and records that were given to him are complete?
Letter of representation.
Thank you. Okay, that's great. So that is it. That is another document that the auditor needs to see that gives him confidence that he has received access to books and records, and that the financial statements were prepared in line with all relevant financial reporting framework, that management has taken responsibility, and things like that. So it's a secondary form of document, and that is handled with ISA 580. The audit approach may become inefficient where the internal controls at the service organization differ significantly from that of the client. So if you have assessed the internal controls in your client and it's significantly different from what the service organization systems are, it may be a problem. Problem in the sense that the auditor may find it difficult to narrow it down to the approach he's going to use. Because from your audit strategy where you document the approach, you go to your audit planning document, you need to come up with specific procedures, specific tests when they are going to be prepared, who is going to perform it. But so those are just challenges that you need to have in mind. So that is it. So this area is very readable. Please just read it and try to be comfortable with it. And they are going to help you in answering questions. Nobody is going to ask you to define anything, but just be very conversant with these benefits, disadvantages, the types of reports, how you respond to risk of material misstatement, and things like that. So if you don't have any question, we'll move to our main topic for today, which is forensic accounting, auditing, and investigation. Any question? No. Yes. Okay, so usually before I go ahead, I'll just give you a brief rundown of what we are going to be discussing in this document. And this rundown is to enable you have that understanding first before we start going to the technical issues. You have that huge understanding. So anytime you see the word forensic as a whole, it's just that assignment that can be acceptable in the court of law. Forensic, basically that assignment that will be permissible in the court of law, something that can be used in the court of law. Now, I remember sometimes, so apart from, let's leave forensic accountant or forensic auditing, when you heard the word forensic in the past, medical forensics, forensic in the past, what usually comes to your mind? I need us to discuss. This is an advanced class. What comes to your mind?
Investigation.
Investigation. Okay. Yes. Lillian, what do you have in mind most of the time when you hear forensics?
Court.
Court. Okay. Investigation, court. Okay. How about Natasha? Okay. I guess Natasha is frying plantain. Okay. So basically you are right. When you talk of forensic, it's just about anything that can be permissible in the court of law. Now, when you talk of medicine, talk of accounting, you talk of auditing, you talk of areas that lawyers don't understand, things that may likely get to trial, will get to a court of law. And these lawyers are not trained in both accounting, they're not trained in medicine, they're not trained in maybe terrorism or whatever the case may be. We are saying that certain professionals are skilled to be able to investigate this matter, bring out all the points, and explain it to people that you can consider to be laymen, people that have no understanding of it, and you explain it to them in a way that they'll be able to judge for or against a particular case. So, but when we're talking of please give me a second. Okay, let's continue. When we're talking of forensic, when it gets to a court of law, will the judge, will the lawyers, a layman, all the representatives, will they be able to understand it? And forensic in our own context can be divided into certain areas: forensic auditing, forensic accounting, and forensic investigation. For forensic auditing and forensic investigation, they are usually used interchangeably in practice. So if you are auditing or you are investigating, all is just for you to gather evidence that shows the motive behind certain actions, and you're able to explain it to get conviction for something in the court of law. When we talk of forensic accounting, that is the kind of is using accounting skills now, accounting skills, even auditing skills, to prepare and analyze financial information so that you can use it as an evidence in the court of law. So forensic has to do with something getting to the court of law that can explain the motive behind certain things, why they have happened, and probably why where controls are lacking, where systems need to be strengthened to prevent occurrence. And there are certain ways that auditors and accountants can be involved in forensic work. They usually do it as other services. It's different from when you are providing assurance on the financial statement. So let's go on and start getting these definitions one after the other so that you have a full understanding of what they mean specifically. So as we have already known, we said the term forensic is anything that is useful for the court of law. Now, in the past, I think like 10 years ago, areas of forensic auditing was not so rapid. 10, 15 years ago. In most cases, when we hear of forensics, then it was for medical purposes. Maybe somebody has murdered an individual and you need a doctor to come and analyze those evidences that have been collected that can make a judge either convict a suspect or not. So the actual idea behind issue of forensic accounting is the desire to have a blend of people that have knowledge of both accounting practice, investigation, and the legal framework. And all this is to expose issues of suspected financial crime, be it fraud or, whatever financial crime, fraud, theft, an accountant that has the accounting skills to also investigate and knows what the legal framework is talking about to be able to present those things in the court of law. So for these three issues, we said forensic accounting refers to the use of accounting, auditing, and investigative skills. And you use them to prepare and analyze financial statements as an evidence. So most forensic accountants or forensic auditors will usually stand as expert witness. Expert witness in the sense that those that are going to be listening to them, both lawyers and the judge, they do not have the expertise, but they need someone that has the expertise in accounting, auditing, and investigative skill to bring it to the court of law so that they can resolve disputes or maybe convict a criminal of a crime. So you can find situations where accountants will be asked to provide information or reports that shows that somebody in a dispute is wrong or right. Maybe an insurance claim. If there is a dispute between the insurer and the insuree, you have insured your car, you have an accident, and the insurance company does not want to pay those claims, maybe making certain assertions that, oh, you were driving and drinking, or probably you gave the car to someone that shouldn't have the car. A forensic accountant can come in and analyze, or forensic investigator can come in and analyze all the possible information and present it for the judge to actually decide. So the key distinguishing factor is that the work of a forensic expert is prepared for the courts. It's as simple as that. It is something that will be used in the court of law. So two types of forensic accounting. You have the investigation and you have the accounting. So when you have investigation and auditing, so two of them are very similar. While this forensic investigation actually refers to the steps taken by the accountant to gather evidence for those legal proceedings, it involves a lot of activities, which are also similar to what we see when we are talking of assurance engagement. He has to plan the activity, he has to gather evidence, he has to be sure, he has to review the controls in the entity, and he has to issue a report. So you can see that there are similarities with the normal audit. In a forensic investigation, you must plan what you want to do. You must gather evidence to support whatever conclusions you are reaching. Where there are controls that needs to be reviewed, because reviewing those controls can actually help you to see why those crime was committed. Where were those loopholes? What allowed that suspect to perform or to be able to get away with that crime? So this is very important. Quality control reviews and issuance of reports. So this can be seen as an other services, or even assurance engagement, as the case may be, review engagement, where you need to issue a report. So where there are any allegations of a wrongdoing or a fraudulent activity, a forensic accountant can be contacted to use all those skills, particularly these two, legal and investigative skill. I have some documents that I used to have good knowledge of investigative skills, which may not be related to your exams, but that is what I use in real life. If I have any investigation, I actually go through those documents, but it's outside your scope. But anyone that is interested, I can actually share those documents with you later. You can use it when you are called upon to carry out an investigation, all the processes you have to go through onto writing the report. So for investigation, it's not all about arithmetic accuracy of figures or maybe conforming with standards, but it deals with business realities of the transactions. What led to those fraud? What led to these disparities? What led to these crimes being committed? So it's not about accuracy, adding 1 + 1 together. It's actually, in fact, when we even talk of investigation, the main purpose of the investigation is to even get that suspect to confess at the end of the day. And for you to get a suspect to confess, that means you must be able to confront that suspect with enough evidence that makes him give up. So there's no point using your investigative skills to investigate, and at the end of the day, somebody is still insisting that maybe that crime was not committed or otherwise. So the essence of gathering those evidence skillfully and having those legal skills is to ensure that you are able to extract a confession from a suspect. While we say forensic auditing refers to procedures used in obtaining evidence for existing or anticipated disputes. So auditing is more about procedures carried out in order to obtain acceptable evidence. When you are gathering evidence for forensic purposes, you have to be very, very sure of what the users of this evidence are going to be thinking. Is he able to persuade them? It must be able to persuade them into what you are thinking, not just evidence to support. You can have an evidence that supports a conclusion, but do you have an evidence that can persuade the judge, that can persuade all parties on the usefulness of those evidences? So investigative techniques are used to identify and gather these useful evidences to give a preventive advice on the occurrence of these irregularities. So if you carry out forensic auditing, apart from being able to table all these evidences that can persuade someone to believe what the issues are, you must also be able to give advice on areas of weaknesses that led to that crime being committed. So, and the relationship, or there are certain areas of it that actually tally with our normal audit. One is you use techniques like test of controls, analytical procedures, test of details to also determine the actual amount of financial loss or financial loss suffered by the entity. So when you are looking at forensic, don't think too wide. Just know that you are gathering evidence to support your own position on a particular dispute or litigation. You want to persuade those people in the court of law. You want to tell them what has led to this crime, why that person, the motive behind that crime. In fact, in most cases, when you're talking of those investigations, I said is mainly to extract what we call extract a confession. That makes it easier. That makes the job easier for you. And for you to do that, that means the evidence must be overwhelming. If it's not overwhelming, then the suspects will continue to deny forever. And if you don't have enough evidence, make sure you don't go to court. Because if you go to court with inadequate evidence that can persuade and prove beyond reasonable doubt why you think you have taken the position you have taken, or something should go against who is being alleged, then you should not go to court. So as I mentioned earlier, I said these two terms, auditing and investigation, are used interchangeably. These two terms are used interchangeably. So please stop me if you have any question. So the common areas where you find forensic audits are actually fraud investigation, matrimonial disputes, negligence of duty claims, insurance, bankruptcy claims, business valuation, tax evasion schemes, contract disputes, money laundering, terrorism. So it's not conclusive. It's not cast on stone to say these are the only areas. So you can apply forensic audits to anything. Two people, a couple are trying to get dispute, they are trying to get divorced, and the man is hiding some houses, hiding his shares, hiding things from the court. You can actually tell the forensic auditor to investigate all those things. Bankruptcy claims. Some people claim they are bankrupt just to escape paying their obligations or meeting their obligations. An auditor can go in and do that. Tax, especially this tax evasion. For you to be able to catch someone for tax evasion, that means you must have those skills that will allow you to gather enough evidence to prove that that person is actually evading tax. You must be able to prove that he has not disclosed all his stream of income. Money laundering, terrorism. So it's actually a skill. And a lot of people are now reading this forensic as they're going into it as a career. As a career, it's now being offered in some universities forensic auditing, forensic accounting, or forensics generally. So, but for you to be able to carry out engagements as a forensic auditor, certain skills are needed. Most importantly, apart from the accounting skills, which will help you to understand areas of compliance with laws and regulation and what the financial statements are supposed to look like. And if they don't look that way, it's only until, for instance, if you don't understand what the standard says about a particular issue, how do you even know something has gone wrong? So you need those accounting skills. Another one is the interrogative skills. How do you interrogate somebody to an extent that he is able to lead you into asking more questions? Yes, as an auditor, you should have a probing mind. You should not be biased, but you should not be asking close-ended questions like, did you steal the goat? Yes or no? Then from yes or no, after he tells you no, then what do you want to say again? So you must be asking questions that are open-ended, that makes the whoever is at the receiving end or the interviewee to open up other areas that could catch your interest. Skills in fraud detection. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of certified fraud examiners. I think that certification actually also teaches a lot of accountants how to identify fraud, how to identify red flags that indicate that fraud may be going on. Just for me, I actually didn't like issue of fraud, concentrating too much on fraud. I believe, as a professional, limiting yourself to a certification that just tells you how to detect fraud is not, just my own personal thing. I really don't like it. I'd rather concentrate on a certification or a knowledge that helps me to understand controls, because controls can prevent fraud. So why now going for a certification that makes me start looking for fraud anyhow? So because a fraud mindset is not actually the best, in my own opinion. You may have a different opinion. So you need legal skills, you need fraud detection skills, interrogative skills. Now, this is also very important. How do you preserve your evidence? How do you keep custody of your evidence? If you have a very serious case in your hands, let me give you an example of what happened in Nigeria some time ago. This issue of oil subsidy. That was a very serious investigation that, a very serious investigation that the whole country wanted to know those that were fraudulent in that subsidy scheme. If you were the auditor investigating that fraud and you are not able to keep your evidence properly, you would actually blame yourself. You blame yourself in the sense that once you don't have evidence to provide, no matter how convinced you are, how do you prove to people? So people can come burn your house, destroy your evidence, even try to, sorry, please give me a second. Thank you. I'm back. So you have to be able to preserve your evidence, because that is the only evidence you are going to present in a court of law. So your mindset should just be about preserving those evidence that will be able to persuade people when you get to the court. Then be ready to appear as an expert witness. I mentioned this earlier. Expert witness. Your presentation skills must be top notch. You must have that skill, needed as a witness to explain things in a way that it should be easy for even the common, someone without any knowledge of forensics or any knowledge of accounting, any knowledge of auditing to come to a conclusion based on your presentation. Okay, so what do auditors offer? I mean, type of services that are offered. One is investigative services, and the other one is legal litigation services. Very simple. One involves examination and evaluation of reported matters to obtain reliable, acceptable, and watertight evidence. That's, you are performing that investigation. The investigation means that whatever evidence you have to gather proves whatever you have been engaged to examine or to evaluate. Your report must be able to prove beyond reasonable doubt. Your evidences obtained must be able to be analyzed, and it should lead to the same conclusion you are having. If you are not able to do that, then you have no business actually going ahead as a forensic investigator. Then another service is for you to perform litigation services. Can you prosecute someone that is culpable in the court of law? You know, and can you stand as expert witness? Can you do it in the ambit of, within the ambit of the law? You know, for instance, if I've been engaged to investigate someone, imagine I know the person has certain documents that will be relevant in the court of law. Does that mean I can hire burglars to go to his house, burgle his house, and get those documents? No, because that will not be done in the within the ambits of the law, within the legal framework. If you have to search somebody, probably you need to get a professional like a police officer that go to the court, get a warrant of search warrant, and you go to the suspect and you are able to search his house. So you must have those skills. You can be called upon to perform all this, and you must be able to do it within the ambits of the law. Any question, please? Any question? Okay. Yeah, no question. So just go through your notes. You are going to find the features of forensic audit engagement. You know, the features for there to be a forensic issue. That means there must be a legal, financial, or administrative dispute. That's what can lead to a forensic audit engagement. There has to be a legal dispute or a financial dispute or an administrative dispute. Now, for audit, for forensic audit engagement, you must have agreed. Some people actually treat forensic audit engagement as an agreed upon engagement, but it must be performed under a predefined context, focusing on some irregularities. So this is the emphasis: predefined context. You don't go with your own, just like we talk of suitable criteria. So you don't go with the mind of just, I'll do it the way I think is necessary. No, there must be a context. What is the assignment? Are they trying to convict somebody? Are they trying to prove that when some issues happen, it means there's a fraud? What exactly is the context? So you must be able to focus on those contexts. Focus on it. Qualification of the financial loss, if possible. If there's a loss, can you come up with an absolute figure that tells us what loss was suffered? That's why at times when you see after some investigation, you see that Nigeria lost 50 billion to oil bunkering. But truly, the accountant was not there when they were doing the oil bunkering. How was he, or the auditor, how was he able to get information for him to actually come up with that absolute figure, saying that in 2019, we lost $2 billion to oil bunkering? So when you're thinking of that, it's far beyond financial statement. It might involve other types of fraud. The fee of this kind of services is higher than what you get from an external audit engagement. In fact, I've seen issues where an external auditor had to drop an engagement because he felt that the other services was more lucrative. So it comes with higher fees and more than an external audit engagement. Of course, a report is likely because it can be a review engagement, can be an agreed upon engagement. That means you are going to come up with a report. But what is different in this is that this report must not have an opinion. So, but let's be careful with this because it depends on the context. Because when you're performing a forensic, you are dropping it for others to decide, for a judge to decide. So you may not be coming up with an opinion to say, based on this, I think this person is guilty. No, rather, your conclusions will be such that having gone through these investigations, having seen all these weaknesses and the access that this suspect had to it, it was only possible that he performed this fraud because of this motive, trying to get a motive, but not saying maybe someone is guilty or not, because that is left for the court to decide. But of course, your evidences must be properly supported. So being properly supported does not mean you are coming up with an opinion. All it means is that you are coming up with something that can lead to a logical conclusion that based on the evidence I've gathered, this is why this person may have committed this, or this is who may have been responsible for this, because he had access to it, he had the key to the offices, he was the one with the checkbook, he had the key to the Gobabi safe. The day the money got missing, he was not in his house, there was no alibi, So those are the kind of things, not actually coming out to say, based on my investigation, this person is guilty. No, you should leave it in such a way that is able to persuade people and answering the question of how did that thing happen? Why did it happen? Who? Where did it happen? For what purpose did it happen? So regarding that issue, you must be able to answer how, why, who, where, and what. Once you're able to answer these questions, I think you are getting closer to the issue of a proper forensic assignment. Then, as I mentioned earlier, for every forensic assignment, you must be able to recommend measures, preventive measures that will forestall future occurrence, that will ensure that these things do not happen again. So you are recommending, but does not mean you are expressing an opinion. And whatever conclusions you are coming up with, they should be properly backed up. Then, yes, conclusive and detailed evidence. I've mentioned that. Conclusive and detailed evidence. Then look at what I said. I said somebody can come to the house, destroy your house, burn it down, break into your car, try to get the evidence. So there's high possibility of somebody trying to destroy or even falsify those evidences that you are gathering, because you are taking it to a court where people would need to decide, to a court to settle certain dispute. So as part of the skills we described earlier, you should be able to keep your evidences. You should be able to keep your evidences properly, Okay, you need these skills. We've mentioned that. Interrogative skills, you can get that. And I think that document I have, even though you guys have not shown interest, can actually still show you how to do some of these investigations. You can read it up. You can go to Google, how to acquire investigative skills or forensic skills. You get everything there. Okay, so we'll discuss later. Okay, so special arrangements and skills for security of those evidences. So these are things you should just read, have it behind your mind. But the true test of your ability to answer questions that relate to forensic evidence is to have this broad knowledge. You should be able to know those specific things, the issue of keeping evidences, the issue of fraud that is beyond financial statements, the issue of need to be conclusive and having detailed evidence. So as an auditor, I think you will not do badly when it comes to forensic, but you need to look at the legal aspect of it, the legal skills and the interrogative skills. Because except for F4, is there anyone in this class that did F4? Anyone that's wrote F4, paper F4? Nobody. Okay, I wanted to find out if at probably there was any knowledge that relates to interrogative skills. But if there is not, and you need to go into issue of forensics, then you have to start learning how to pick up some of these skills by the side. So the knowledge of the legal framework is needed. Acting as expert witness, we have already discussed all that. Okay, so, and we also discussed the similarities with external audit engagement. I said it involves planning. It involves evidence gathering and analysis. You have to review the process. You have to report. So if you look at normal audit methodology, these are things that we do in external audit, and you can also make use of them while carrying out a forensic assignment. You must be able to plan what to do, where to go, who to talk to, what evidences to collect, how you are going to keep those evidences, how you have to make yourself secure, how you will not even, so even for money laundering investigation, you also have to remember that there's another relevant law that says that you must not tip off the suspect. So things like that, you need to be able to tie the knots. And of course, similar procedures. You test controls, you perform substantive procedures. And what does substantive procedures mean? Just basically substantiating claims. If it's about money, how do you substantiate whether those claims are right or wrong? Are they correct? About those substantive procedures, you need to be able to substantiate certain things. So the skills you use in substantive procedures are also needed here. You need to comply with ethical principles, like I said. Because I know a suspect has certain evidence does not mean I have to go and burgle his house to get them. I need to adhere to the confidentiality principle. I need to be sure that I'm also straightforward in all my dealings. Because you can see that in the past, some lawmakers were asked to investigate the subsidy claims. One of the lawmakers went to collect $625,000. I can't forget that figure. And when he collected the $625,000, he kept it in his cap. He kept that money in his cap and he wore the cap. But unknown to him, if he had all the qualities of a good investigator or he was ethically upright, he would not seek to collect a bribe. He asked for a bribe of $1 million and he collected part of it in the airport. One, he went to the house to collect it and he put it inside his cap and he wore this long cap to conceal it. But the person he was dealing with was a rich man, a philanthropist, and he was very informed. All he did was to record all the conversations. He had to video him with CCTV, him coming into his house and going out of his house. So they just kind of discredited the investigation that was carried out by the House of Representatives. I'm sure some of you remember that case. And up to now, that man was called Mr. Integrity. We have not heard of him anymore. So also you need to adopt quality control measures. That's measures that ensure that you are doing the right thing, that you are performing a quality assignment. So whatever the framework is for a forensic quality control assurance, you need to get familiar with that. Then lastly, contract. Contract in the sense that for every engagement, be it with your auditors experts, be it with your component auditor, be it with your, whoever you engage to perform certain assignments, you need to get a contract. And that contract is very, very important because the contract has the terms and conditions that must be met. If not, you might see that issues of disputes will come up again, litigation and things like that. So please have this behind your mind. Similarities: contract, that's engagement letter; quality control, ethical principles, very important, integrity, straightforward, confidentiality. If you do not have the skills required to perform a forensic audit or a forensic investigation, you need to get it. That's professional competence and due care. Everything you need to perform that assignment for your client, you need to have it. Professional behavior, tie that one with integrity. Don't collect bribes. Don't let anybody, you need to be straightforward. So it can get really messy when you're talking of forensics. Okay. Okay. So what are the differences? As long as we have the similarities, we also have the differences. You cannot predict the timing of concluding your work when it comes to forensic. Unlike audit, you know you are coming in for 3 weeks, you are coming first for interim, then you are coming for the main audit. But for this one, it can be clear. It's less predictable. You don't know how long it will get you to gather evidence. You don't know how long you have access to certain people to be able to interview them. And again, in audits, yeah, you said we need interrogative, interviewing, legal skills, but you don't need it in audits. Audits, you don't need to interrogate. Of course, you can interview by this. In fact, the proper words we use is you can inquire, you can discuss as part of getting evidence, inquiry. You can obtain evidence verbally or maybe get it in writing, but you are not supposed to be interviewing them or, be interrogating them as if you are interrogating a fraud. So in most cases, remember that we said management is responsible for fraud, for preventing, detecting fraud. And the only type of fraud that concerns the auditor is the one that leads to the financial statement being materially misstated. So it's not for him to, it's for the management to interrogate maybe the staff that is involved, except they are involved themselves. But you must be able to gather your evidence in a way that proves that that fraud happened. Not asking them, why did you perform the fraud? That is not your assignment. Your assignment is to express an opinion on the set of financial statements. The difference is, again, this one focuses on disputes and conflicts, which is not the case with audits. Asset misappropriation and fraud. Of course, if you are doing this, you are performing a forensic, is actually maybe to unravel a corruption or a fraud or misappropriation of assets, stealing, embezzlement, things like that. Why the other one is just to express opinion. Okay. Less about conformity with standards. No opinion is usually expressed. We are clear with this. You do not express an opinion. You do not express an opinion. Materiality level is not required. You don't need materiality level. Everything is material in an investigation. So someone that stole 1 naira, that stole 10 naira from the cash box can lead you to asking more questions that will prove that that person is actually involved in a more higher type of fraud. So issue of materiality is not required. And of course, you focus on like the normal audit where you focus entirely on the financial statement. Here, you have to focus on other aspects, not only the financial statement. So you have the procedures here. You can see that those procedures, inquiries, you can perform analytical procedures, inquiries to have a good understanding or the context under which this investigation should be conducted. Because if you have a different context or something else in mind, you'll be going in a separate direction. While you need to actually gain an understanding. Just, from your experience with audit so far, I think this issue of gaining an understanding is something that can't leave you anymore. For whatever assignment, you need to understand. Be it group audit, you need to understand the components. You need to understand the group. You need to understand the subsidiaries. Be it any kind of assignment, understanding is key, because without understanding, you would know where those risks are. Objective of the engagement and develop profile for each party is okay. Those ones will be in that document I promised to send to you. Analytical procedures, that is very important. Trend analysis, ratio analysis that may lead us to believe that things are happening the way they are for certain reasons. You can review books and records for discrepancies. Internal control, weaknesses. In fact, more about gathering evidence about the weaknesses, the lapses, the anomalies that allow those irregularities to occur. Do you understand? So you must be able to understand the lapses, identify those weaknesses that has led to these lapses. Trace unusual transactions. Your skill from money laundering should be able to help you here. Unusual transactions, their origin, those that are responsible, and things like that. Interrogate parties, inspect companies, insurance policy, and whatever. So, do you have any questions? Any question? Any question? Before we continue, let me hear from you.
No, I don't have.
Okay, thank you. So, so as we said, part of the similarities with, in short, since this is an engagement, a review engagement, there's likely going to be a report. So I'm sure you don't have any problem with that. But what should be the format of a forensic audit report? You know, reporting format, you know. So first is the issue of cover page. That is normal. The title, the period, the name of the experts, what you are trying to do, you know, that cover page. The table of content. Maybe I will even try to share some reports with you, just like any normal report. Executive summary. This executive summary is very important. You know, big men or executives may not be able to go into the nitty-gritty of what you have done, all the appendix you have gathered. They may not be able to go into that. But with that executive summary, is highly summarized, straight to the point, that will make that executive get that broad picture and understanding of your conclusion and why that issue. Introduction, background, objective of the assignment, very key. Since it's not an audit report, it is a report, but you need to provide that context. Let's know why you are, what is the objective of this assignment? Is it to prove that there are weaknesses that led to a fraud? Is it to prove that somebody committed a fraud? Is it to prove that, you know, so it could be anything. You need to explain what those objectives are, the works you performed, the procedures you carried out, what are your actual findings. So one thing we don't do when we talk of normal audits, like for the kind of audit I perform, we try to, okay, please give me a second. I need to get the door. Okay, I'm back. Thank you. I had to get the door. Okay, so objective, very important. Then you have the procedures performed and what you did. Okay, so I was talking about the issue of findings. Like the kind of audit I try not to use the word findings for the kind of audits I do, because it's internal audit and compliance. Because when you use those word findings, it's as if you are actually going all out to find those errors. You are finding, so it's as if you are finding faults, you are finding errors. But it's okay to talk of factual findings in a forensic audit, because actually you are supposed to find in a forensic. So that language, you have to be very, very careful with the kind of languages you use when you are performing audits and even a forensic audit. So it's okay to use findings because that is why you were commissioned. But when you talk of the usual audit, we try to prevent, we use things like observations, what we observed, not what we found. So when you find, that means you are looking for, but when you observe, that means while performing your audit, you observe certain weaknesses, not that you find faults or errors. Okay, internal control lapses identified must be there. Recommendations, very key. And preventive measures. Recommendations. So these are still normal for your normal audit. You have to recommend, come to a conclusion. So conclusion, recommendation, conclusions. So I'm taking off this recommendation. I'll rather have it as conclusions. Undertaking and declaration. So this undertaking and declaration is mainly about talking of declaring that you are independent, declaring that you have done everything in line with the ethical standards or the guidelines or whatever the agreed upon procedures. You have to take that undertaking, and that you don't have anything, hidden, no skeleton in your cupboard. When I was growing up in the village, we used to call it cupboard, and it just came back again. So brief description and profile of the team and things like that. So that is that. The format, try to have it in mind. I don't see your examiner asking you to draft a forensic report. But what if he asks you to write a report to somebody, and they give you an appendix, tell you that you have been asked to do this and this and this and this, and that you should provide a report. So please be prepared for it. Just know that there is no really accepted format per se. What we are saying is that it should contain these things, and it makes sense that you have a cover page, but you won't be having a cover page in the exam anyway. But you can use this in real life. Introduction. So in your exam, in case you are asked, you can start from introduction, background, objective, work performed, and things like that. But it's highly unlikely that you are asked. And as we agreed, we said, please let us just rush through this syllabus, and everything we do by second week of May, we'll solve for the last 2 weeks, we'll solve for June, and you are ready to go. So, so see this note I kept here. Forensic engagements are generally performed as an agreed upon engagement. So agreed upon engagement, you remember what they are from your previous studies. What it just means is that whoever has commissioned you has sat down with you, and you guys have agreed on what you should do. So you conduct it as an assurance engagement depending on what your client's requirements are. So that is it. So so remember this statement. I made this statement earlier. I said the ultimate goal for the forensic investigation team is to obtain a confession from the fraudster. So if you are able to do that, that makes life more easier, because the investigator should actually prove beyond okay, we said he should not confront the alleged fraudster until you are able to gather sufficient evidence to extract a confession. So if you don't have it, like I mentioned, if you don't have all the evidence required and you confront the fraudster, either in the court of law, you are going to be, you'll not be happy with yourself, because you'll not be able to prove beyond reasonable doubt. I watched an investigation that took some hours. I don't know, some of you might know O.J. Simpson, one of the great American football players that was accused of murdering his wife and the friend to his wife. and this thing went to court for more than a year. And I watched this investigation, and you'll be surprised that certain actions from the expert witness or the prosecutor actually blew the case, because they were confronting the suspect or the suspect with evidences that could not be proved. And at the end of the day, they had to throw out all those allegations, especially because the culprit could not confess. Once he confesses, that means you go straight to court and they convict him. Once he confesses, what it means is that they will ask him, are you guilty or not? He will say, I am guilty, and you plead. But when he says not guilty, that means the assignment is bound to drag and drag and drag. And if you are not well prepared, you don't have all the evidence required, then you might be in for a very long thing. So the interview with the suspect is a critical part of evidence gathered during investigation. So evidence can be gathered using various techniques. We have said that: analytical procedures, test of control, substantive procedures, using computer-assisted audit techniques. For example, to go through the computer to know when certain transactions happen, where it happened, who logged in and who was not supposed to log in, and things like that. So also from discussions, interviews, which you will not do in a normal audit. Here you can discuss, you can interview, but most importantly, when you are interviewing at this point, you may want to record, because you need it as evidence. Because somebody can tell you, oh, I did it. When it gets to the court of law, you tell you, oh, I never did it. And when we talked of, I say 500, sufficient and appropriate evidence, we were actually saying that some written evidence is more reliable than oral, because oral can be denied in the future. So all this also linked to your knowledge of what you already understand. Substantive techniques such as reconciliation, cash count, and things like that. Okay, so I need questions, and in the absence of questions, I would like to introduce us to another topic so that we can get to where we are going on time and start solving as much as we can solve, so that you become confident of facing the examiner. So questions, please. Or whatever, any other questions? Any other questions? If you don't have a question, please tell me you don't have a question.
I don't have a question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we'll be looking at social and environmental audits. We'll start. Let's see how far we can go. We have a target of finishing this class by sometime next week. We'll be looking at, after we look at these social and environmental audits, then we'll be looking at specialized audits. That's audit of not-for-profit organizations, audit of public sector performance information, then current developments. Under current development, we'll be looking at integrated reports, audit quality framework, transnational audits, auditing disclosures in the financial statement, provision of non-audit services, and rotation of auditors. So this, what I mentioned, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are for current developments. Those are the areas that your current developments will focus on. And we're going to add data analytics, issue of big data and data analytics. Then maybe we'll also do certain discussions that that focus on this current happening issue of this global pandemic and how it affects entities' financial statements, how it affects IAS 10. Do you understand? Subsequent events, how it affects audit reports and things like that. You need to be prepared. You really don't know, because things are happening differently now. So most likely, you should expect that your examiner Lisa Weaver, if she's still the one, may want to pull a fast one on you so that you don't come out from the exam saying, oh, they asked about COVID-19. Really, you don't care about COVID-19. It's just to apply the principles that we have learnt to whatever she decides to do, be it pharmaceutical, be it, whatever. Okay. So, sorry, I'm trying to also send you a note while we're at it.
Sorry, sir.
Yes.
That cross-sell of audit services, which topic is it in?
It's not in your syllabus. I've actually gone through your syllabus, and I don't know whether it was removed. But did you see it in a question?
Yes.
Okay. I think some of these questions you need to be sharing it with us so that we'll know the context. But cross-selling, from probably what we are talking about, it should be handled under other services, under other non-assurance services. Let me see. Okay, can you share it on the group? Share it on the group or send it to us as an email, whichever you decide to do. Share it on the group. And okay, I think I was discussing with you. Yes, it's good I mentioned this. Lilia was actually asking certain questions that she solved, and this question was talking about the auditor, including integrity of the directors the auditor included that in basis of opinion. So the question that came was that, so why should he have put it there? I can't remember the question you asked me again, Lilia. Should he have put it there? But I know that the essence of having ISA 701, which is key audit matters, was to actually give flexibility to auditors to be able to explain to us those specific instances and issues, or those specific issues that relate to that audit and what happened on the field. So saying that it shouldn't be, so when you ask me a question, I can never go straight and say yes or no, because it depends on the context and whoever is asking that question, how long ago. So, she later realized that that question was a December 2010 question. So a December 2010 question is already 10 years old, as you would have observed. It's 10 years old. There have been changes to the ISAs between 10 years. And even the international standards on auditing, the changes to ISA 700 and all those relative standards came in 2015. So you can see that 5 years after that. So if you are solving a question that is so far back, you need to be careful. Because if you are not careful, you might take some of the answers you are seeing as those responses as what is obtainable now, which could be very, it could actually put you in a very bad state. So, so I just thought I should mention that. But please, can you share that question with us? So let me see the context of which, because, for example, if they ask me about cross-selling of audit services, I don't think I'll be thrown off my feet as long as I understand what it means to cross-sell and audit services. That means you get a service, right? And you engage another auditor to perform that audit. Or you get an audit, then, you might want to see it from the joint audit point of view. You might want to see it as issue of group and things like that. So, Lillian, when are you going to share that question with us?
I will look for it.
I thought you just solved it now.
It's been long. It wasn't even last week I sent that in to you.
No verse. Old age has come now and we can't at times.
Sorry, sir. But based on what you just said now about that report.
Yes.
The examiner's report said the examiner said that
yes.
Including the views of management in your basis of opinion shows that you are not professional. Rather, you should refer it back to is it the presentation disclosure? Sorry, the disclosures in the
Okay.
financial statement. And while referring back, the disclosure should be specific in where the person is going to find whatever thing is going to look for them.
Okay. Now, if you remember, because I'm also trying to recall, I think that question you said it had to do with a particular item in the financial statement, right?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
when you are
So
yes.
the directors, we are not agreeing with the auditor about the treatment. So the auditor, while reporting it, now say that the directors
management do not have integrity.
integrity, yes.
Okay.
So the examiner was like, you should not bring in the integrity of the management or their views in the basis of opinion. That rather you should refer it to the
Disclosure.
disclosure. Sorry.
But now, you know, that was what the examiner said. But I'm even
Yeah.
telling you that when you are talking of those disclosures now, you will still not be mentioning integrity. You will likely be even saying that, oh, probably we didn't get this, we didn't get that, not referring to their character.
Yes.
Yes. So when they say be
Yes.
specific, that means because the standards, the international financial reporting standards, is very clear on the requirement of each standard and the disclosure requirement. So that disclosure requirement can help you to specifically talk about that issue. You did not get this, you did not get this, you did not get this. Hence, it led to, you know, but not bringing in that. But fast forward to 5 years after that, this is possible. But and again, why I'm even saying that you can't even be talking of like integrity per se in disclosure, rather the specific item you are talking about, is because financial statement does not give you, you know, it's what I'm saying, it's very regulated. What should be there, you know. And if at all something like that, if I was confused in the exam more in 2010, you know, when I'd not even qualified then, if I was confused in the exam more, probably I'll be thinking of something towards other matters just because it doesn't relate to the financial statement. But you see that item itself will go to the appropriate place, which is the disclosure and things like that. And because it has not been properly treated now, so we can't even be talking of emphasis of matter. You know, so I'm thinking that, okay, so maybe when you are treating that item, who is going to put it in the disclosure? Have you forgotten that the auditor does not actually even prepare the financial statement? So how does this issue of probably that all those things they disagree to do, how will it get to the financial statement? Because the auditor does not prepare it. So you can't be responsible as the auditor to put it in disclosure. Because auditor does not have disclosure. Auditor does not prepare it. Auditor is just, as all those sections is what belongs to the auditor, and he has to use it. And there was this school of thought in the past that, no, audits are too boring. You don't even understand what happens in the audit. You don't know this, you don't know that. So, but with time now that they've modified it, that means the auditor can say certain things he wants to say. All those areas he had difficulties, all those areas he had to change his plan, all those areas he had to do one or two things, he can put it there. But for disclosure, management prepares the financial statement, statement of financial position, income statement, notes, equity, and notes. That note is the disclosure, and he does not have the control over it. I don't know if you get me. So I may likely be wrong. I don't know in what context the examiner is saying that the auditor should put it in disclosure. He can't put it in disclosure. Maybe he can advise them to disclose it there, but someone that does not even have integrity to agree with you, how does the person now, you know, kind of agree to now even disclose it, that they did not give you what they were supposed to give you? So his own audit report should have been modified, and on the basis for which he did that modification, and that will be clear. And I can bet you that if you adopt by preparing, you will see what you should do. But if at all, for someone like me that have not been writing exams, if I just find myself in any of those situations, I just bring in logic, I bring in reasoning, and I make sure I explain why I'm taking that position I'm taking. And most often than not, you will be given a tick, a pass, because you are saying why you are seeing it that way and what you. So you could be wrong, but you have to let anybody know why you are taking the position you are taking, and that is how professionals should actually behave. So when you find it, please let's see it, let's us share in it. But please, anytime you are solving question, be sure that that question has been properly modified so that it doesn't keep you off balance. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. So social and environmental audit, first things first, I think should we go along like this, or I should quickly send you the notes? Should I send it or you follow me?
You can go, sir.
Okay. Okay, so so let me first explain all the truancy and leave it from this technical issue. When we talk of social and environmental audit, it's as simple as ABC. One, as an organization, you are affected by a lot of things that happen around you. You have a lot of stakeholders. You have you are impacted by your environment. You are impacted by policies. You are impacted by laws, regulations, and things like that. In fact, even your existence as an entity and your activities as an organization will leave some environmental footprints in the environment, either through disposal of your waste or or when you look at socially, are you even meeting some corporate social responsibility? How are you impacting on your environment? How are you impacting on various stakeholders, be it your customers, be it your regulators, be it your investors, be it your workers? What do you do to keep up? So you have different stakeholders. I'm sure you know, you've heard of integrated reporting and why integrated reporting had to come into place. And now there are so many rules now that even tell us about people protesting because of greenhouse gases, carbon emissions, waste, use of renewable energy. In fact, a lot of people are even saying that if you don't perform your business ethically, they will not even patronize you. An example is Cadbury. Cadbury had some issues some time ago. Why? They were using child labor in Cote d'Ivoire. This child labor were helping them to harvest the cocoa. They were helping them to process it before they sent it to the UK to be processed into that chocolate you and I will always like to have. But there are people that insist that as long as there is child, because they're looking at it from the ethical point of view. If you're using child labor, then we are going to boycott your chocolates. If we find out that you are sponsoring terrorism, or we find out that you are sponsoring certain things that ethically people believe are not supposed to be, then they are likely going to boycott your activities, boycott your product. So the social landscape is changing in the sense that now with time, even planes will stop using jet fuel. They have to start using some kind of renewable energy because they believe that the pollution, climate change is affecting the environment. The way you dispose your waste is affecting the environment. And now you should know that there are a lot of environmental policies, environmental laws. So when you look at business risk, which is the risk of you as an organization not meeting your objective, you know, we can break it down into financial, operational, and compliance. So looking at it from the business risk point of view, the compliance is very important. If you don't comply with environmental laws, that means even that your financial statement can be impacted. That means you might need to put in provisions for penalties and fines. And apart from that, it can even affect your inventory. once people start boycotting your inventory, are you sure you are still keeping it at the net realizable value, or you are keeping it at cost? And it could also still have a going concern problem, which we discussed as part of business risk. So your business can just shut down just like that. So in essence, what we are saying is that environmental audit is becoming, very, very welcome in the world because of the impact that activities, environmental activities have in an organization. So because of that now, we need to carry out audits to prove that we are in good standing, that we are following the environmental laws and regulation, social laws and regulation. Internal laws, have you put in processes to be able to identify your compliance with these laws? Are you able to satisfy all your stakeholders? Are you even socially aware to the point that you are developing your business in a way that it will appeal to the society? As long as you are not able to do that, how do you continue to exist as an entity? Then after some time, you have to stop business. So it just means that social and environmental audit refers to a periodic evaluation of activities of an entity to determine their impact on the environment. That is the environmental footprints and the social landscape. So whether you comply with all these relevant laws and regulation and social legislation and standards, this is what environmental and social audit is all about. Because as you know, everybody is shouting, oh, we don't want, what do we call this? This issue of spoiling the ozone layer, and it has just run out of my mind, but I think I mentioned it in the course of this study. I'm sure it will come back. So what we are saying is that you need to make sure that you are aware of all the legislations in the social and environmental landscape. And for you to do that, you need to audit all this, your social and environmental compliance, either as a risk management process. So as part of your risk management process, you need to have it in mind that all the laws and regulations that relate to the environment, how do you deal with the environment? Okay, I was thinking of warming, global warming. Is that what they call it? Yes, global warming. Because of all these issues, people are becoming increasingly agitated. And any failure for you to manage these social and environmental issues will lead to significant risk to shareholders' investment. Because the investments are there to be managed by the entity to ensure the long-term survival of shareholders' wealth and assets. But when you are not complying with environmental laws and social laws, then that means you are even putting all those shareholders' investment at risk. So as part of the overall risk management process, management should make sure that they perform these audits to ensure that they are compliant. So because if employers if there are employees that will tell you that, oh, I am leaving this organization because the way they do things is not ethically right. I'm not happy with the way they do things. You see customers looking elsewhere because, oh, okay, you are not using reusable this thing. Maybe you are you are destroying the environment. You are cutting down trees. You are using child labor. You are sponsoring terrorism. So it could be anything. So what we are saying is that you must continue to look at these areas where your activities impact on the environment. So some of the examples of the relevant laws and standards, those that relate to environmental law and those that relate to social law. Look at this Waste Disposal Act. I can bet you that Abuja has its own Waste Disposal Act. You may not be aware, but I remember when I was living in a particular estate in Abuja here, they'll usually bring those bills to you. Behind it, you see all the acts that relate to environmental protection, why you should not dispose your waste improperly. So if I'm to be a business and I'm working in that estate, in fact, the estate is Guaripa Estate, are working in that estate. That means if I don't comply with some of these Waste Disposal Act or Environmental Protection Act, then I'm likely to either be sanctioned or closed down and stay out of business. So I'd like you to, because in your syllabus, they also mentioned ISO 14,000, environmental management. So at your leisure time, pick up this standard, ISO, just Google it, ISO 1400 is a standard. International, ISO means International Standards on Auditing. So those are the standards that they think that in fact, they try to certify organizations based on their compliance with certain principles or laws. So you need to take a look at that. Global Reporting Initiative Framework. This is also another relevant one. Is about reporting on your sustainability. How do you sustain your business? How do you rely on your environment to survive? So take a look at Global Reporting Initiative, because you know that certain parts of your syllabus, I think close to 15%, they are going to test some of these issues. It may come out, it may not come out, but I recall one of the P7 questions that asked specifically about key performance indicators. So for a student that is not ready to answer some of these out of audit questions, you may struggle a little bit. You should be able to attack some of these questions because there's not going to be so much right and wrong. You know, that question was talking about what should be the KPIs, how do you corporate social responsibility in the aviation sector and things like that, and what are the key performance indicators that should be set. What is key performance indicators? It's just any indicator that can show that certain industry or certain organization is performing well in that area, and their performance can be measured based on those key performance indicators. So please don't take this lightly. Social laws, Child Labor Act, health and safety. You can see social is actually different. There are a lot of industries now, maybe the aviation, you have the oil industry, a lot of places you start hearing of health and safety, health and safety. In fact, there's a standard on this health and safety. There's an ISO standard that talks about health and safety. ISO standard that talks about health and safety. So for those that don't know, when you talk of ISO standard, those are standards that kind of try to prepare a benchmark of what should be done in certain areas. Information management system also has its own standard. Those that make clothes have their own standards that they need to follow. Why do you call this a shirt? You call this a shirt because it's meant to be worn. It's supposed to have a neck and places where you put anything apart from this. Once you remove these places now, it becomes maybe a gown or something else. So there are standards. So you need to have a good understanding of what international standards on organization is all about and what they certify, especially those that relate to environmental and social laws. Labor laws in different countries, those are social laws, which at times they may not be too enforceable. You know, it depends. But you see, let me tell you something about this ISO standard. Now, when you follow this ISO standard as a business, at times it is telling your consumers or your stakeholders that you are living up to the highest standard possible. So it will make your stakeholders happy with you. Oh, these people have been certified by ISO. That means they're doing things properly. So that, for instance, you have two businesses. One is being certified by ISO. The other one does not have a certification by ISO. What it means is that one is doing things according to the laid down procedure, standard, proper way of doing things, certified by experts based on certain key KPIs, key performance indicators. Why another one is just doing things haphazardly. So if I want to buy a product from two of them, I see an ISO certification on one, I don't see on one, then it is not the best. So for instance, now you can have an organization that makes wires for wiring the houses. The ones that has ISO certification on how to make those wires, we do it according to the standard. Why the one that does not have will just do it and will not take into consideration some things that are very important. That's why you see some houses will just get burnt because you have used a substandard wire. So when you hear those words substandard, it comes from the fact that they are not certified by the relevant international standard organization. In Nigeria, the relevant certifying authority is called SON, Standard Organization of Nigeria. So this is just to make you aware of certain laws and standards that can affect the organization. The ones that relate to environmental and the ones that relate to social. So for social and environmental audit, it has just 3 major elements. Like I've mentioned in my discussion earlier. One is that you must agree on a metrics. What should be measured? What should be measured? What is that organization supposed to measure that shows that it is keeping up with environmental and social laws? The agreed metrics must most likely be in response to legal and regulatory requirements. So that thing you want to measure should not be agreed upon, like the way director will say, okay, we are agreeing on this. No. Is there any legal framework? Is there any regulatory framework in that industry that says how things should be done? So that's your metrics must be measuring your compliance with those regulatory and legal framework. So, okay, see the example here. Targets could be set as target that you could set could be on emission and consumption level. For instance, if you have those big plants that you are manufacturing something, someone could say, according to ISO standard or according to electricity regulatory agency, you should not have certain amount of emission into the atmosphere because it will destroy the atmosphere. But remember that most businesses are in it for profit. So you cannot be making profit at the detriment of others, at the detriment of the environment. And you are leaving environmental footprints that will affect all of us, or most likely not even, so I'm a consumer, you are making something I like, but you are doing it at the detriment of other people, or you are destroying you are polluting the water. How can you pollute the water that everybody is supposed to drink? So there has to be, so whatever metrics you agree has to be in line with legal and regulatory requirements. Now, whatever you have agreed, these agreed metrics that should be in line with these legal and regulatory requirements must be measured in, as in there must be a performance measure, and that measure must be in line with the regulatory requirement. So you set the metrics first. What will be measured? What will be measured should be based on regulation. And now, the performance measure now should be based on what that regulation is. So you measure it based on the regulation, then the performance measure, which is the KPI, the measurement and documentation of the actual results of the performance, should be in line with that regulatory requirement. So this is where the area of KPI comes in, key performance indicator. So this key performance indicator must be in line with what you have agreed to measure, which must also be in line with the regulatory requirement. Then lastly, the last component is the reporting, compliance reporting. So when you are reporting, you're actually reporting on whether you are complying with those established policies, and any variances you see, that you set your to reporting on the level of compliance and establish variance against set target. So the target you set here, you set a target at this level, at the agreed matrix level, then you measure your performance. When you measure your performance against the target that is set, then you have to report on the variance. And whatever the variance is, you have to explain why there is that variance, because that means you are now solving the problem. So the reason for the significant variance must be explained. That is where you have now started complying. Because for you to have set the matrix to be in line with regulation, you have measured your performance in line with that regulation. Now, any variance you see, now you must explain it. And it's only when you explain it to management or you report it to management, management will start taking active steps to ensure that they close whatever those variances are. Because a non-compliance with law and regulation is very risky. And if you remember, I call it like sudden death. If somebody comes to your organization tomorrow and you are not keeping up with the regulatory requirement or the law, there will be no excuse. You could actually be sanctioned, you pay fines and penalty, which reduces your profit, or better still, they close you down. For instance, you are poisoning the water. So if you're poisoning the water, why should you remain in business? They lock down your operation. Now, at the end of the day, the shareholders' wealth is affected, and you are not maximizing, their wealth, and their investment is gone. So, so the audit could either be performed by two people, either the internal auditors or external auditor. External auditor, you could get someone to perform it, or internal auditors. But I can assure you that a lot of people would rather want the external auditor to perform it because of what? The credibility and independence issue. Oh, okay, the internal auditor can perform this audit and try to tailor it to satisfy management. But by the time somebody sees that it was actually performed by an external auditor, it gives it some kind of credibility. It gives confidence that the person that prepared it is actually different from the management, or is independent of management. So, of course, when we are talking of the reasons why there has been increased, the factors that lead to this environmental and social audit is because of certain issues. Let me come again. We can say that the engagement of audit firms to report on this specialized kind of audit and non-statutory information is on the increase globally due to certain factors. The factors is because environmental activists are pushing and protesting. Can you remember some protests that happened in France? I think they call themselves Yellow Jersey or something. There are some people that will just keep, so in fact, some people will keep protesting on why climate change is not being passed as a regulation worldwide, or why bushfires are, there are so many activists pushing for environmental issues. And again, at times, some organizations want to be seen as ethically compliant. Ethically compliant, because when you are ethically compliant, sensitive customers will patronize you. If I see that you are not funding child labor, I want to patronize you. If I see that you are recycling your Christmas card, I want to buy from you, because the person that is not recycling is actually cutting down trees. If I see that the nylon you are using to pack things in your bag that you are making is made from recyclable material. So you see some people are actually advertising the fact that they are using recyclable materials to make their plastics and things like that. It attracts ethical funds from environmentally sensitive investors. No penalties for infractions. That's why some people want people to go about it. Then it boosts your organization's reputation. So just have a very open mind on this. Some people want to be transparent. That is why they will engage an external audit firm to perform it. They want to show more transparency by way of environmental accounting and reporting. So we're accounting on the way we are affecting the environment. We're accounting on the way we are trying to repair the environment. We're accounting on the way we are carrying out our corporate social responsibility to the... I know there are some social laws that might even tell you that, oh, you must contribute maybe 1% of your total profit on social responsibility. Things like PTF, Petroleum Trust Funds, where organizations in that industry have to contribute a certain amount, then again, you want to give an impression that you have credible and honest, risk-conscious people running your organization. So those are some of those things, and that is the basics. Less negative reporting, your reputation, your host community will be more receptive. Part of those social corporate responsibility, you can try to share things to them, send their children to school, build schools for them, and employ some of those people. So those are what we mean by social, environmental, accounting, or responsibility generally. So I would like us to stop here for the main reason that you need to prepare for your next class. And we are about 4:59 on the dot. So when we continue, we are going to talk of the impact of social and environmental issues on statutory audits. Now, what it means is that you as the auditor, what do you do when it comes to these issues? How does it affect your work? In line with 315, you need to plan in a way that you are able to assess any risks that relate to social and environmental issues and substantive stage and all those things. So we'll continue from here on Wednesday. By God's grace, I hope we'll not be overwhelmed with work, but I'll keep you abreast with whatever we decide to do. Any question? And if there's no question, feel free to, I'll let you go. Any question? Please respond by saying no question, then I end the class.
Question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you. See you during the week or catch you on the group chat. Bye-bye.
Bye.